President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to announce a cabinet reshuffle within the next 2 weeks. That's according to the ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula, who revealed the president has yet to confide in the party about the changes he wants to make to his executive. The ANC has today resumed its national conference in hybrid form. The top leadership in the Free State delegation are based in Mangaung, and that's where we find Newzroom Afrika's Govan Whittles. One thing we do know for sure that there are one or two positions that are indeed open, but what more do we know about the expected changes?
Well, the big change that we're looking at, Dudu, is the one at the deputy president's position, and whether or not the president will decide to replace David Mabuza with Paul Mashatile, the newly elected deputy president of the ANC. It does seem that will happen, and now we know from some commentary from the Secretary General that they expect it to happen within 2 weeks. Of course, it's likely to happen after the delivery of the January 8th statement and just before the calling of the ANC Lekgotla, which usually happens before the Cabinet Lekgotla and is then followed by the State of the Nation address. Fikile Mbalula was addressing journalists shortly after the reopening speech by President Cyril Ramaphosa here at the Safari Lodge, where the ANC's second leg of its national conference is happening. And it does appear that while the president has already made some intentions clear to the ANC leadership regarding a replacement policy for the cabinet, he hasn't necessarily spoken about a reshuffle. This important distinction is important because, of course, we know that Fikile Mbalula's election to Secretary General means that he will have to be replaced in the Transport Ministry, that Secretary General position being a permanent position, and then the Department of Public Service and Administration position being vacant at the moment, currently being filled in an acting capacity by Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi, who has also not returned to the ANC's NEC, and there is large expectation that at the very least the president would fill the transport minister position, fill the DPSA position, and then solve what is emerging as a conundrum for the ANC in the position of the deputy president. David Mabuza is not in the ANC's NEC either, so if he is removed as the deputy president of the country, for all intents and purposes, he would be in political retirement. But of course, no decision has been communicated as yet. And I think let's take a look at what the Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, had to say about the considerations that are being made ahead of this reshuffle.
Reshuffle or not reshuffle, replacement, yes, President has applied his mind on the issue of replacement, and then he will decide when to do it, or to do an overall reshuffle of cabinet, which is a principle the ANC will discuss with him. But in terms of who he prefers, he knows what he actually wants. So we are coming to you in the next coming 2 weeks on that.
What of the business of the day, Govan? How far along is the second phase of the conference?
They're in the presentation of the Commission's reports. So essentially, when they're presenting, they're giving the overview of the discussions that happened during the Nasrec leg of this conference. And that entails not only presenting a summary of what the ANC's current policy position would be, but also what changes should be made. And what they're presenting summaries on is the ANC's strategy and tactics document, which we believe has already been completed, the Organizational Renewal Commission document, which is a brand new commission, which the organizational report said was so new in its inception that it hadn't been able to do much of its work. So much of the report itself is theory based on what they believe should happen on the ANC, and doesn't include a lot of experience on trying to implement the renewal. And then they're moving on to the finance and sustainability presentation of that commission report. this is just the beginning of the second phase of this conference. The reason why they anticipate that this would go late into the evening, and why the Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, has said the President is likely to deliver the closing address in the early hours of the morning, with the declaration being read and adopted in the early hours of the morning, is because after the presentation of these summaries, they have to open it up for discussion. This is when the hybrid model of holding this conference will really be tested, because that's when they need to patch in delegates from all of the other provinces at the different provincial hubs, and they've been able to patch them in successfully so far. Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General, saying that they haven't had much problems or many hiccups when doing that. But of course, the real test will be when they have those substantive discussions on constitutional amendments and also changes to policies, and then eventually have to put it out for the adoption, which is essentially calling for someone to move, and then second, and then they have a general show of hands to see whether or not there is enough support for this to pass. Interestingly, the Secretary General saying that some constitutional amendments they won't vote on because they already had enough support for them at the conference when they were first proposed. So the ones that are contested and do require a vote will give us more insight into where the divisions lie in this new leadership of the ANC. They've painted themselves as a united front, but in reality, the margins by which people were elected to the top positions were even smaller than the margins of 2017. And 2017 has taught us that where there were small margins, divisions were entrenched leading up to the next conference. The President faced massive criticism leading up to this conference, and this being his second term, he will likely face even more criticism and attempts to undermine his leadership as he completes his term of office as head of state.
Thank you very much, Govan. Whittles. Plenty still to come from our team in Mangaung. For now, though, we say thank you for that update.